Welcome to the Real Talk Retirement Show, where we explore the financial side of retirement and beyond. Whether you're currently retired or planning for the future, we offer real, relatable conversations about money and personal finances. Most importantly, we dive into all these topics using real talk. Now, let's get real about your money and your retirement.
Hello, friends. We are back with season 2 of the Real Talk Retirement Show. Tracy, can you believe we've already wrapped up a full year with this podcast?
How about it when we haven't been canceled?
We have not been canceled yet, which is absolutely amazing. We'll take that. We will take that every day. So we're actually excited. I don't know about you listeners out there, but Tracy and I have been having a lot of fun with this podcast, and we couldn't wait to get back in the studio and start recording some episodes for season 2 for everybody out there. So hope you're enjoying the ride so far, and hopefully we're getting a little bit better every time, Tracy. That's the goal anyway. Tracy, every January, as we start to dive right in here, we find that gyms, right? Gyms start to become overcrowded. At least so I'm told, if I'm being truthful. Probably haven't seen the inside of a gym in maybe 10, 15 years, but that's beside the point. But I think the word on the street is gyms start to get really crowded in January. Calendars become a lot better organized than maybe they were the last few months. Let's face it, our bank accounts are still recovering sometimes from December. And by the time February rolls around, though, that treadmill at the gym, not quite as busy as it used to be, right? It becomes a little bit lonely. The budget is, let's say, maybe not doing as well as we would like. So today, Tracy, we're going to fix that for everybody, right? We're going to be talking about financial New Year's resolutions that hopefully don't fade away like my mother-in-law's leftover Christmas cookies.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. Absolutely. I think may have had too many of those cookies over the holidays. But like many others, one of my resolutions is to get in better shape physically, right? And shed a few pounds. So Brian, I'm sure you have a few resolutions yourself, right?
Yeah, the typical ones, Tracy. I too would like to shed a few pounds, maybe getting better overall health. And one of the other ones I'm really going to focus on is becoming a better podcaster. I know some of you listeners are thinking, "Oh, come on, Brian, how can you get any better than you already are?" But I think there's a little bit of room there for improvement. So that's going to be my resolution for this year. Well, today, just so we don't offend anyone out there, we're going to stick to financial resolutions specifically, now that we've hit January. So, according to various studies, over 80%
Hmm.
of New Year's resolutions fail by February. And those financial ones that we're going to be talking about, some of those are the first to slip. But guess what? People who set specific, measurable financial goals are far more likely to achieve them. I know we've said that in other podcasts, Tracy, so the same thing will apply to this conversation as we talk about resolutions. People who set these measurable goals hopefully will be okay in the end. So this episode is going to show you how to be in that successful group of people, that 20% that don't fail on their New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, for sure, Brian. And that sounds really good. While some may see it from more skeptical point of view, meaning that, wow, here we go again, another January and failed resolutions, having that fresh start every year can really help to provide us with that mindset, right? A mindset shift. And who knows, maybe changing a few financial habits for some folks can lead to, freedom, more opportunities, and even reducing some stress, which is always a good thing, right? So today, as you mentioned, we have 12 financial resolutions. Sounds like a lot, but we pretty much did one for every month, if you think of it from that perspective, for the new year that we're going to cover today. So let's jump right in. These are somewhat quick. So kick us off with the first one, Brian.
All right, so resolution number one. Let's all try to write down on paper, take pen to paper, our most important financial goals. This can definitely be an important starting point where you're compiling a list of really what you want to accomplish in life. Again, we'll focus on the financial side of things, but lists are great for all of those life accomplishments that you'd like to see yourself achieve. So whether that be to retire early, buy a vacation home, travel, start a business, or something else perhaps. But by committing these goals to paper, it really provides a concrete objective that we can strive for and then hopefully eventually attain. Also consider working with an advisor. Remember, that's super important if you really want to put together a comprehensive financial plan Or if you've already done so, if you've already engaged with an advisor, revisit that plan with your advisor to make sure it is still viable.
Yeah, that's a great way to sort of get started, right? The first one. So the second one, sort of building on top of that, is to take a look at your investment portfolio. Really review your current investments as well as your risk tolerance. So this is something that certainly should be done at least annually, if not more often. But what a better time of the year, of course, to do it than at the beginning of the year. So here's what I would think, when you're reviewing your current investments. Take a look at your performance. Just make sure it's appropriate for your conditions. Of course, everybody would like greater performance, but if you're in 50% stocks and 50% bonds, you know, take what that gives you. Don't be upset if you don't have the same performance as somebody that has 100% stocks and the stock market did really well, right? Just make sure it's appropriate for your asset allocation and your situation. And then that level of risk, and we talk about that a lot, right? We call that risk tolerance, just confirming and making sure that that's appropriate. That your willingness for risk is so very important and often overlooked. So for a lot of folks, especially for those saving for retirement, it can be important to consider reducing that equity exposure as we get closer to the time we need to start taking money out. So again, reviewing those investments, including making sure your level of risk is still appropriate.
Excellent. And that takes us to resolution number three. Create a budget and consider tracking your spending. Now, I know this isn't a very popular thing to do, budgeting, not a lot of fun, but it doesn't have to be overcomplicated, I promise, to develop a plan of how your income will be distributed between spending and saving. Doesn't have to be complex. And by tracking your spending, it's a great way to create awareness of what you are spending and where you're spending that money. Without having a budget, things kind of get lost. You forget about this bill or this subscription. So definitely keep track of it at whatever detail level you are comfortable with. And there's a lot of good apps out there, Tracy, YNAB, Every Dollar, Mint, just to name a few that can help you with tracking your spending. Or you can really be crazy like Tracy and build a fancy Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and list all your expenses each month by retailer, provider. Tracy, you tend to go a little overboard, wouldn't you say?
I would say that that's very true, and I do like my spreadsheets. So that takes us into number four. As you're tracking things, take a look at your debt levels. So really, resolution number four is review and manage your debt level. Now, as we think about debt, keep in mind that not all debt is bad, but it is important to have that good grasp on how you're paying down your debt. And this once a year check in particular, it's a great time to make sure you're still on track. Most people these days have credit card, of course, and credit cards, that debt, so to speak, it's just imperative, of course, to pay off every single month, right? So you're not carrying debt and incurring those high interest rates. If you are in a position that you are carrying debt, especially on multiple cards, consolidate to the lowest rate card and always pay more than that minimum each month. And just try to get in that mindset, make a commitment to pay that off ASAP, right? We have confidence that you can do that, right? Develop a plan on it. The other common debt as we think about that many or most people have at least at some stage in their life is mortgage, right, on their home. So many folks, at least folks that I talk to, have insanely low mortgage rates that even in recent years, whether they bought a place in the past 5 to 6 years or they refinanced. If you don't have a really solid interest rate, just track where the interest rates are, and in the future, consider refinancing if that opportunity presents itself. And we know right now, comparatively to likely the past almost 20 years, interest rates are higher for mortgages than they have for much of the past 20 years. So, but opportunities will present themselves likely in the future, and just manage that when it happens. So again, and if you do refinance, don't try to extend that life of the current mortgage when you're doing so. Say you have a 30-year mortgage and you're in year 13 and you refinance, don't start that 30-year clock over. right? Just reset it and continue on as you go through. So debt management, again, something else to check in on.
Absolutely, which takes us to resolution number five. And this maybe falls under the category of easier said than done, but really
Hmm.
strive to save more money. Okay. So if you're able, really try and maximize your retirement plan contributions as much as you can. Put that money into some of those tax deferred retirement accounts. And just so you know, feel free to roll your eyes at me if you wish, but if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you can do this, in 2026, the IRS says that you can save up to $24,500, put it towards retirement. And that's just your money. That doesn't include any potential employer contributions you may receive as well. So that's 24,500. And if you're old guys like Tracy and me, over the age of 50, Tracy likes to point out that I'm a little bit older, but anyway. But if you're 50 or older, you can actually put in an extra $8,000 of what they call catch-up contributions for a total of $32,500. And another one of those quirky IRS things is that if you fall exactly between the ages of 60 and 63, you may be able to save even a little bit more beyond that $32,500. So, for most of us, even if you can't quite max out your savings, definitely challenge yourself to, bump up your contribution rate, put a little bit more into your retirement account year after year. Try not to get stagnant. Raise your account by, 1 or 2% every January. And even those little adjustments can really make a big difference in the long run. Retirement experts, and we feel this way at Conrad Siegel, do recommend that you try and save about 10 to 15%. We lean a little bit more towards that 15% number. So try to save about 15% of your current income each year, so your total annual salary, and put it into those retirement accounts. Remember, that 15% benchmark does include employer contributions, so you can factor those in as well. And then, when you get to probably within about 6 to 8 years to retirement, hopefully by that time, if you had a family and you had kids, maybe you're empty nesters now and you don't have quite as many financial concerns as you did years ago, really try and bump that up to about 15 to 20% or even more, especially if you're trying to make up for lost time. If you lacked savings and discipline earlier in your career, honestly, the reality is the 10 to 15% benchmark, that may even be a little bit higher. I recommend that 15% for folks in their 20s and their 30s. But if you've waited till you're 40, you might want to start out with that 20% rate. But bottom line, don't get overwhelmed. Do what you can now, make adjustments later, and really focus on finishing strong.
Yeah, so moving on to number six, it's really looking for other ways to save money. Brian, you just talked about how to save through your retirement accounts in particular, but looking for other opportunities to save money. And sometimes this is overlooked, but going to share just a few of the more common ones. This first one is probably, very, you're thinking, well, of course, this makes a lot of sense, but bundling things, your internet, cable, phone service, even insurances, those type of things. But bundling some of your services with one provider often can provide some discounts. A lot of states allow for electricity bills or natural gas bills, some utility bills that you can select or compare generation providers, the generation rates that are there. So, this is one I know that I'm just a hawk on. I set my calendar to let me know, like flashing, bright lights when I can make a change, when my sort of window of time comes up. And it's hard to say how much I actually save, and sometimes it's probably pennies or dollars, but it always seems to be worth it, in the end. Another thought in trying to save some money, bidding out insurance coverage. I mentioned, bundling it in a provider, but also bidding that out every once in a while. Home and auto insurance in particular. As you add family members or different vehicles, every few years, it could be a good idea to try to get quotes from other providers there. And with the auto coverage as well, also just make sure that your current coverage is appropriate to your current conditions. So a lot of some folks maybe pre-COVID days that had longer rides to work, or maybe even were when they were working and they haven't made those changes to their policy after they're working. Insurance companies have different rates for the number of miles round trip you're driving to work every day. So if you change jobs or just conditions there, there's just a lot of different things, and just reviewing those. And then the last one, sometimes this can really creep up on you. I know I sometimes look at my credit card bill and I see some subscriptions that are on there, these recurring monthly costs. Maybe it's, on some of the TV, components that are out there, the Netflix and so forth of that nature. So just review all the subscriptions you have. So check those credit cards and question some of those recurring ones of, hey, are folks in the household still using those? And are they still needed?
Absolutely, Tracy. And that last one, the subscriptions, I am definitely guilty of having way more than I need. Every app that's out there, as far as like entertainment channels, I feel like I have it. And I did find one just a couple weeks ago. There was like a $50 payment that came out of my account. And I'm like, what is that? And it turns out it was an app that one of my kids was using in high school. I think it was Quizlet or something, something of that nature. But this kid is now a junior in college. And I've probably been paying $50 extra for the last 3 years. So you really got to pay
Yeah.
attention, monitor it, and know when it's time to get rid of certain ones for sure.
Yeah.
They can drive you crazy. So just make sure you know what's out there. Resolution number 7, be prepared for a financial emergency. Okay, it's going to happen, right? Throughout our lifetime, something is going to come up that we weren't expecting. For most of us, it's going to happen a few times throughout our lives. So having an emergency fund can definitely save you big time from going into debt or, raiding your retirement savings when the unexpected occurs. Tracy just talked about how we want to avoid credit card debt at all costs. We certainly want to avoid dipping into our retirement accounts for an emergency. We're just really robbing our future selves of all that stream of retirement income. So I would definitely urge everyone to consider having about 3 to 6 months set aside worth of living expenses, if an emergency would occur. And keep that money in liquid assets, something where you're not taking very much risk at all, if any, and that's going to be available to you as soon as that emergency occurs. And having that, cash cushion, if you will, really provides just as important as anything, that peace of mind that we all are longing for.
Absolutely. So number 8, here's another fun one. You were talking about budgeting, and people love to budget. Something else people love to do is talk about their own demise,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
creating or updating a will, thinking about your own estate planning. And the amount of folks that we've heard say, oh, I'm 60, I'm far too young to think about that. Virtually everybody should have a will. That's super critical. And again, we get it. No one likes to think about death, but having a will and other estate planning documents, that are up to date, it just ensures that your assets will be divided according to your wishes. And we know that life is short. Nobody knows when their time is up. So being prepared is super important. I mentioned some of the other accompanying documents to the will, a power of attorney document, really a financial power of attorney, healthcare directives, healthcare power of attorney. All those things are normal and advised as well. And then if you have children under the age of 18, making sure that you have named a guardian in those documents, really in your will, to take over, your children in the event of a simultaneous death with your spouse. Nothing, this is not something anybody wants to ever think of, but reality, those situations, very rarely, but can pop up. And if you don't name those guardians, basically the government decides the fate of where those children end up. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I don't want the government deciding any more than they already do. So,
I'm with you there. Yeah.
yeah. So again, and then finally, if you already have a will, and hopefully the answer might be yes. If it's not, you need to get one and make that a top priority. But if you have a will, just pull it out, review it annually. My wife's one of her favorite activities, of course, is when I pull out that will on an annual basis. I normally do it between Christmas and New Year's. So, that just recently happened, of course, but I force her to have a conversation about it. So again, that's some pretty fun times in the Burke household, as you can imagine, Brian.
Yeah, how come I haven't got an invitation to those conversations, Tracy? I'd love to bring some eggnog and join in on those fun topics. Since Tracy's definitely brought the mood down already, thanks a lot, Tracy. Might as well keep it rolling, right? So, again, continuing with that idea that nobody wants to think about their own mortality. These are not fun topics, but it's also super important to not only have a will, but to also review your beneficiary designations that you have in place with all of your different financial plans. So, if you neglect to update your beneficiaries, it really could have devastating results for your loved ones. Attorneys say that it happens more than you would think when a person dies and all the assets or their insurance proceeds go to a distant relative, or even worse, an
Mm.
ex-spouse. Imagine that. We do see it happen more often than you would think. So you want to make sure you're constantly reviewing who your beneficiaries are on your accounts if anything would happen to you. And as major life events take place, if you get married, if you get divorced, have kids, grandkids, always remember to review your beneficiary designations and make adjustments as those life events take place.
Absolutely. So number 10 is reviewing your insurance coverage. So earlier we talked about, bidding out or putting, taking a look at your insurances and bundling them and some other things, seeing if you can get better rates. This is a quick one, but super important, right? Just ensure that your coverage for, your insurances. So we're talking really about your life insurance, your health insurance, your disability income insurance, your auto insurance, your homeowner's insurance. And some folks have what's called umbrella insurance coverage, making sure all of those items are just appropriate. You have the right amount of coverage, right? As a side note, I don't know how you feel about this, Brian, but sometimes I get it easy with that life insurance one. I have some life insurance on my noggin, and I know it's important for that future financial security for the family, but feels a bit like a bounty on my head at times, right? And I'm always looking
Yeah.
over my shoulder when my
Yep.
wife's around, since she's the one that's going to benefit the most when I croak. So just saying.
Tracy, totally know the feeling, my friend. You're not alone. You're not alone there. All right, we're getting there. We're moving on to number 11 now, everybody. And this is a little bit more of a cheery one. Think about charitable giving. Many people do include giving to charities within their budget, where they can really give back to their communities or organizations that are super important and meaningful to them. And when we relate that back to your financial situation, I mean, itemizing the tax deductions on your tax form, you can actually deduct those donations for income tax purposes. Okay, so something to consider based on how you file your taxes. And charitable giving can also be an important part of an estate plan, both for lifetime giving and bequeaths after death. Tracy put that word into the script today, and I really wanted to say it, so I left it in there. But and besides donating just money, you can consider donating other things like blood, clothes, toys, or even your time. What's more important than your time? So charity is a great thing to give back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially at this time of the year. So the final one, number 12. Just, this is a sort of a big picture. We started off with writing out your goals. That was number one. Now, number 12 is just being more committed to a greater awareness of your financial situation. And tying on to that, being educated, listen to every one of our podcasts this year. So we made it number 12 as the financial resolutions, of course. But of course, we would love that. But really renewing your awareness of your situation, as I mentioned. If you're married, make a point to talk about finances with each other and make sure that you're all on the same page, right? If you're looking for some good resources, and I do a lot of reading on books, and a lot of those regard money. One that is very popular that's out there is Morgan Housel's book, simply called Psychology of Money. As it sounds, it covers some of the more emotional elements that sometimes can derail sometimes our financial situations, right? So highly recommended book to potentially check out. Another great one, and this is a brand new book, but it's called Your Money by Carl Richards. So a brand new book, and as a teaser to an upcoming episode here in the first couple months of the year, we're thrilled to have Carl join this very podcast as a guest to talk about all of these things.
Yeah, can't wait for that one, Tracy. Looking forward to have Carl join us and getting his thoughts on all these important topics. So yeah, looking forward to seeing Carl. And by the way, that book you recommended, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, Tracy, how long have you been at Conrad Siegel now? This is your number.
Yeah, about 18, I think.
Okay, I was just going to say, I remember I was already here at the time, and I believe you kind of gifted that to all of us, I think, early on, or when at some point in time, and I still have a copy of that near my bedside there, believe it or not. And that is one of the few books that I've read in the last 25 years. I probably read three, and I can definitely say that the Psychology of Money is one that is worth your time for sure. So yeah, thanks for that gift that keeps on giving.
There you go.
All right, so listen, we made it. We got through all 12. So as we wrap up, let's think about some action items as we always do. And we'll start by saying, the obvious, make a commitment to review these items. And if you're married, do it together with your spouse. You're in this together, right? So whether you tackle one of these items per month or, you do all of them at one time, just commit to a better overall financial situation for yourself and your family in 2026. Make that commitment.
Absolutely. And our sort of commitment to you or effort is going to be, trying to help give you resources to make that, easier on you. So we do have a workbook that we're going to share in the show notes section. So go out and find it there. And it really tackles many of these items we just talked about. So again, go to the show notes section of the podcast, and you're going to find a piece that's called Am I on Track? It is just what it sounds like. It's just a great guide to be more organized and tackle some of these important issues.
Yeah, great piece. Go get it, everybody. And then finally, if you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to our podcast using one of the various platforms you can find us on, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, or other places. Go ahead and do it. And that way, Tracy and I will just kind of automatically pop into your life each and every month, right? What else could you want? So remember, everybody, as we wrap up, please reach out to us anytime with questions and comments. We would absolutely love to hear from you. You can reach us at podcast@conradsiegel.com. We are here to help. And remember to share this content with your friends and families and give us a 5-star review and subscribe if you haven't already. But don't do it out of pity. Make sure you love the content and then give us that 5-star review. All right, everybody, looking forward to more episodes to come, including our episode with Carl Richards. Tracy, Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for tuning into today's show. The Real Talk Retirement Show is created and produced by Conrad Siegel, an advisory firm that specializes in helping people prepare for retirement and beyond. If you want to learn more about our work or meet the team, you can visit conradsiegel.com. Information on this show is for educational purposes only and should not be considered personalized investment, tax, or legal advice. Before making decisions, you should consult with the appropriate professionals for advice that is specific to your situation.